Do you know what virtuous means? It's not our modern day term. 13, when she says she willingly works with her hands, the work she's doing there is lifting her hands up in prayer. She shares her testimony. She shares what God has done in her life. Proverbs 31. Proverbs 31 is unique in many aspects. It starts off, the first verse says, the words of King Lemuel, the utterance which his mother taught him.
Proverbs 31.
The utterance which his mother taught him. It says, what, my son, and what the son of my vows, and the son of my womb? Do not give your strength to women, nor your ways to that which destroys kings. Oh. Saying, watch your relationships, watch what you do. As a matter of fact, in Deuteronomy, it said, don't multiply wives or women to yourself. In 1 Kings, it talks about Solomon's heart was turned because of all of the women that he loved.
Wasn't there a song made like that?
That I don't know. Relationships are one of the things that can bless your life, or they're one of the things that can make your life absolutely miserable.
Amen.
To watch relationships, to have good relationships. It says, it is not for kings, O Lemuel, it is not for kings to drink wine, nor for princes intoxicating drink, lest they drink and forget the law and pervert the justice of all the afflicted. You know, throughout the book of Proverbs, it has a lot to say about drinking. Chapter 20 starts off, said, wine is a mocker and strong drink is a brawler, it's raging, and those that are deceived thereby are not wise. I've seen too many people that get addicted to alcohol, or they get addicted to that lifestyle. I work with a guy that's recently just got his license after 10 or 15 years of not having his license. And he come up to me and said, hey, this guy just brought me a case of beer and it's cold, but I don't have any way to keep it cold, so I'm going to leave and go buy a cooler and some ice. It's like, you know, you're the boss on this job. And you're leaving to go buy a cooler and ice just to keep your beer cold. That just seems strange to me, you know. It's like, that's more important than making sure the job runs properly. I've got to go buy a cooler and some ice to keep my beer cold. Strange. It destroys lives, can bring people to ruin and poverty. Drinking can also destroy a whole lot of relationships. I remember when I lived in South Dakota, they were talking about the neighbor's youngest brother. And he said, well, he's never got off the bottle. He just went from a baby bottle to the brown bottle. He said most of the time he has brown bottle flu. He has a hangover and can't function very well. So watch what you do. It says intoxicating drink. They drink and forget the law. Many people, when they drink, forget the law and forget what's right and wrong. Go driving around. You know, there was a guy named Don Moore, Donna Kirkpatrick, a Miller kid, I forget his first name. They all died in alcohol-related crashes. So at 19, I decided I was not going to drink. Just not worth it. Said, I'm not going to support an industry that contributes. And I realize it's a personal choice. But for me, my personal choice was I'm not going to support an industry that causes so much heartache or that contributes to so much heartache. Just my personal decision. Verse 8 says, open your mouth for the speechless, in the cause of all who are appointed to die. Open your mouth, judge righteously, and plead the cause of the poor and needy. You know, instead of bullying people, sometimes you're supposed to stand up for them. You're supposed to open your mouth and protect them. You're supposed to take whatever action is necessary to protect them. That's not me saying, that's what the Word of God says. You don't need to bully people, you need to protect people. And then Proverbs 31 is known for who can find a virtuous wife. Do you know what virtuous means? It's not our modern day term. It means someone who is strong. It actually comes from a whirlwind, a force. They have valor, integrity, and honor. They're strong people. Not only if they have honor, it means they also have some sense of moral purity. Because it says, who can find a virtuous wife? For her worth is far above rubies. And rubies are a precious gem, and not quite as valuable in some places as diamonds, but in some countries, rubies are the elite gem that people want to use. And to have a crown with a big red ruby on it is one of the highest honors. So her price is far above rubies, far above. How far above? How far is far above? I don't know. Mountaintop? A mile high? How high above is worth? To have a virtuous wife, that price is far above anything that money can buy, or anything that has value here on earth. And it says, the heart of her husband safely trusts her, so he will have no lack of gain. Isn't that interesting? The heart of her husband's going to trust in her, and that trust is going to change his life. And he's going to be able to be who God created him to be because he can safely trust in her. Says he won't have any lack of gain, which means that's going to have an influence on everything that he does. There's an old saying, behind every successful man stands a woman. Telling him was wrong. But there's a lot of truth too. If you want to be successful and you have a good wife, it's going to make life so much better and easier.
Amen.
The value is far above rubies. And he gains in every area of his life. And she does him good and not evil all the days of her life. She does him good. Happy is a man who finds a woman like this. But you have to understand something also, that when Proverbs was written, most marriages were arranged. You didn't have a choice. And most girls were married usually between 12 and 14. Didn't change God's rules and laws at all. Still had to obey God, still had to do everything. You know that when they were settling the West, the average age for a pioneer woman to die was 29, and she was usually a grandmother at the time.
Well,
I think our society has failed in so many ways. Especially, I think, when children get to be 13 or 14, they send them off and get married. You don't have to deal with all the teenage years. And I honestly think it would be a good idea. They would need help and guidance. That's why the culture usually has them move in with their parents so they start learning and understanding things. But to say that you should wait to get married until you're 25, 30, that kind of leads people to have a sexually immoral life. This woman, according to Proverbs 31, she seeks wool and flax and willingly works with her hands. You know, there's several instances. If you go to verse 20, it says she extends her hand to the poor. Yes, she reaches out her hands to the needy. In that particular verse, the words that are used means that your hands are reaching out to help somebody else. And sometimes the King James and New King James doesn't do. Their translations leave little aspects that are missed. Because in verse 13, when she says she willingly works with her hands, the work she's doing there is lifting her hands up in prayer. Because the word means upturned hands in prayer. She lifts her family up. That's the work she does with her hands up to the Lord. And that's an interesting concept, isn't it? You don't see that when you just say, well, she works willingly with her hands. Yes, she does. But the real meaning is her hands are upturned, lifting her family up to the Lord. And she is like merchant ships and brings her food from afar. She also rises while it is yet night and provides food for her household and a portion for her maidservants. I'd say it'd be nice, but how many of you want to have a maidservant, 2 or 3 of them take care of your house and do these things for you? That would be nice. I mean, that's kind of what was the deal there. She considers a field and buys it, and from her profits she plants a vineyard. So, then she rises up early, she takes care of her household. You believe it or not, saying that she kind of works inside the house and outside the house, which kind of blows away a whole lot of theology. People say a woman's place is to stay at home and do this and that. And no, according to this, she works both in the home and outside the home. She considers a field, buys it, plants a vineyard, makes money. What it's saying. I don't have a virtuous woman who plants vineyards. She makes bracelets and does nails and does all kinds of other things. But she does something. She's a virtuous woman. Got that job thing. Want to go out and do something. Works with her hands. Lifts people up. She girds herself with strength and strengthens her arms. Throw me a muscles, honey. You do it.
well, come on, put it up.
The word merchandise here is just profit. She perceives that the profit she makes is good. and her lamp does not go out by night. She stretches out her hands to the distaff, and she takes hold of the spindle. Because back then they spun their wool and made the clothes and done all of this stuff. And it was time consuming just to make sure your family was clothed. It wasn't like you walk into Walmart, pick up a shirt, and you leave. You shear the sheep, you clean the wool, you spin the wool, you make clothes. It's a whole different process. But she also reaches out her hands to the needy. She is not afraid of the snow for her household. I thought this was interesting because listen to the colors and what colors have significance. For her household is clothed with scarlet. What color is scarlet?
Red.
What's it signify? The blood of Christ. Her house is clothed, is covered by the blood of Christ. She makes tapestry for herself. Her clothing is fine linen and purple. Fine linen is what color?
White.
White.
White is a symbol of
Purity.
and righteousness. And purple is what?
Royalty.
Royalty. So her household is covered by the blood of Jesus. They have the righteousness of Christ. They are the sons and daughters of the Most High God. They're part of the kingly family. Her husband is known among the gates, where he sits among the cities of the land. And if you notice, if you go through Proverbs 31, especially starting in verse 10, this is also a poem that each line starts with a letter of the Hebrew alphabet and goes right down through it. We miss that because it's in English, and we don't see a lot of the things that were there. But if you notice, starting in verse 10, it says, who can find a virtuous wife? And then as you go along, you see that her life being exposed, what she's done, how she lives. And you get on down, and now her husband, first of all, it just trusted in her, but now he's had gain. Now he sits among the elders. So he's made progress in his life. He has position and honor from people. And a lot of it is because he has a virtuous wife. She makes linen garments and sells them. Why does she make linen garments? She shares the righteousness of Christ with other people. She shares her testimony. She shares what God has done in her life. And supplies sashes for the merchants. And it says, strength and honor are her clothing. She shall rejoice in time to come. What's the time to come? When we all get to heaven, what a day of rejoicing that will be. Okay, does that give you any hint? What is the time to come? She opens her mouth with wisdom, and on her tongue is the law of kindness. So not only does she understand the things of this world, but she understands the things of the Spirit. And she knows how to talk with people and how to encourage people. She watches over the ways of her household and does not eat the bread of idleness. Her children rise up and call her blessed. Her husband also, and he praises her. So what does it mean to be called blessed? It means prosperous, successful, straight, contented. The original meaning to blessed was to be straight, but the word blessed also means to be spoken. How many of you remember the story of Jacob and Esau? Jacob schemed to take Esau's birthright because Esau was the elder. Dressed him up in goat skin and to deceive Jacob, who was going blind. When Jacob blessed him, he spoke over him. What he spoke came to pass. When Israel spoke to the 12 tribes of Israel, what he said come to pass. When Noah spoke about Shem, Ham, and Japheth, what he said came to pass. So sometimes when you receive a blessing, it's spoken, and if you understand it properly, it comes to pass. When you bless someone with your words, make sure they're good words because it's going to come to pass. And I really, honestly, with all of my heart and all of my being, believe that we are getting back to the point where the Lord's going to honor words more. He's had grace throughout history. Now it's the period of grace is going to be over, and what you say is going to come to pass. So if you speak good, you don't have to worry about it. But if you're not, it's still going to come to pass. I honestly believe that. I believe our words are going to be one of the key influencers in the whole world system until the Lord comes back to be blessed. Her children rise up and call her blessed. Say, yeah, she is good. She's a straight woman. She's good. Many daughters have done well, but you excel them all. Charm is deceitful, and beauty is passing. Everybody gets older. And, just from my personal experience, you don't look as pretty when you're 80 as you did when you were 20. Nothing personal, just an observation, because I don't look nearly as good as I used to.
God was good to me.
Beauty is passing. But a woman who fears the Lord, she shall be praised. Give her of the fruit of her hands, and let her own works praise her in the gates. Saying, what you do to influence other people, and sometimes what you've done in your life, are the things that are going to praise you. Not how good you think you look. Those things are, he's already got that reward. He won't give you any more for it.
Yes, been shot down lately, Tony?
No.
Well, no, but he interrupted, so I just thought I'd add a little bit too, The woman who fears the Lord, that honors the Lord. It's nice to see women, and when you look at them, your spirit rejoices because they know the Lord. And I've seen some old women that were just hags, I'm sorry. They were just ugly on the outside and ugly on the inside. Mm-hmm. I've often, wondered about Moses because he didn't leave Egypt till he was 40. Then he spent 40 years on the backside of a desert till he had a burning bush experience. Then he's 40 years in the wilderness. And when he goes up to meet with God, now he's at least somewhere 80, 90 years old. Most of his life has been in hot, arid sun. And I don't know about you, but if you ever would see some pictures of some old Native Americans, like from Arizona or something, their face looks like a road map. It has so many wrinkles on it. And yet Moses' face shone like a flashlight. Had to put a veil over it. I'm telling you, to have an old craggly face and to have God's glory shine through that, that's a miracle. That's some real glory of the Lord. So there's hope for you, Tony. You might see a little glory shining through you.
I was talking about how good he was to me because of my wonderful wife. That's what.
Oh, yeah.
Well, that's a feeble attempt at a saying. But I agree with the truth of the statement. But what you do in your life is going to praise you. What are you doing? Are you just being grouchy? You just want to have your own way all the time? You know, I talked with a woman, and she said, yeah, I know my husband's supposed to be the head of the house, but I can influence him, and, you know, it takes a while, but I can either nag him or influence him to come around to my way of thinking. And I said, you have no idea what you're doing. Not only was she walking out from underneath God's protective covering, she was damaging him, and a year later he had a heart attack. And I think she's alone now. And it's like, really? Getting your own way was that important? It was like a game to her. That whether she wanted it or not, she just wanted to make sure that she could manipulate her husband into doing what she wanted to do. And I see that game being played too often. People want to manipulate so they get what they want. And it is very, very destructive. When it says love your neighbor as yourself, which means you put your neighbor ahead of yourself. You think about his well-being. You sacrifice some of your things for the good of others. That's why I say relationships are so valuable, priced far above rubies. They can either be really great, or like the lady that said, well, you know, I can make my husband do what I want. Yeah, you can. And grieve his spirit so much that he had a heart attack over it. Most people don't know how to love. And I think it's almost impossible to really love without knowing God. Because he lets you experience some aspects of love that are just so fantastic. God does love you. And we need to love each other. Even if we don't like you sometimes.
Love you, man.
We can love without liking everything that they do. And we can express love. Sometimes when we're still mad at what they're doing. Because God does that. You think he doesn't love you? And you think he's pleased with everything that you've ever done in your life? Probably not. I'll just end there. God loves you. We'll leave it go with that. Love one another.
Yeah.
Love one another. Rebecca, will you sing the little beautiful feet while Dave and Diane do communion? And Logan does something, I'm not sure what.
Sure. I'm working out at the gym every day. Most day.
How beautiful the hands that serve the wine and the bread and the sons of the earth. How beautiful the feet that walk along the steep road, the hill to the cross. How beautiful, how beautiful
You know, sometimes we think about Christ as our Savior and our Redeemer and the sacrifice that He made. And a lot of times we forget that in John, when it says that God is love, that means Jesus is love also. And it was His love that allowed Him to do everything. So I want to take today, when He said, do this in remembrance of me, let's remember His love and ask Him to increase our love. Let's partake. Blessings to all, and to all go goodbye.
Love you guys.